Alright, we're live. Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Okay, we're gonna get started, and not started, well, we started with the stream, but we're gonna continue with this character that we're trying to set in, sort of like in the world or the universe of the Cyberpunk 2077. Hey Alex, hey Gustavo, thanks for joining. Yeah, so we're gonna try to wrap this one up today. I'm not gonna get into too much details, I think. The idea is just to show you a couple of, polishing techniques so that, we can go from this very rough dynamic sketching or sketch into something that, could be presented better, or at least can be used for baking maps or retopology or something like that. That's the idea. So let's go ahead. Before we start, I just want to get rid of a few things because I think I said that in the last stream that I just do sometimes things that I think might look good, and then I wake up and check again and it's not good. So these things, I think I'm just gonna create a folder. Let's see. Let's just drop that one in there. Yeah, so I just wanted to get rid of those things, and I'm not convinced about this part either, or even this one. Yeah, I think that's fine. And I said that maybe I wanted to do this kind of like more like a cyborg type of thing, not necessarily well, not a cyborg, like a more robot than human. So I might be removing some of the facial features actually. So we're gonna focus on that. We're gonna do some panel loops first. So let's go ahead and just do that. I'm gonna duplicate the head and maybe go into solo mode. I mean, it's super sketchy, but we're gonna do a clay polish just to get rid of some of those bumps. And I'm gonna use, actually, I'm gonna go into the brushes that come with ZBrush. Smooth brush, smooth stronger. And that way we can polish this a lot faster. This one is a really handy brush to use, especially when you have lots of resolution. Alright, so what I'll do is I'm gonna fill in some areas. So this duplicate of the head is going to be essentially the base of whatever helmet or whatever, yeah, mechanical part or hard surface area we want to have in this character. So I'm going to make sure that I have some nice polish pieces here, maybe even some hard angles like I just did there. And then from there we can generate some nice topology, or not topology, but nice pieces that look polished enough. All right, so that's roughly what I meant. So you get an idea of where, I mean, we don't really need any of that, but that's actually not too bad. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes we can just do, destroy things or remove pieces, and actually works a lot better. I had this character artist, this teacher that used to tell me that, like, once you finish, not once you finish, but once if you're designing something new, right? And then you just get excited with the design and you start doing things and things. At the end of when you think you're finished, just go ahead and remove something. Like if the character is holding like a spear or something, just delete that. Or if you added a patch or something, delete that. Like something extra, just delete it, and then it's kind of like going back, and you can see it with a fresh eye, I think. And there's something similar in terms of, I don't know, I think it's this fashion designer. I don't know if she's a designer. Carolina Herrera, something like that. Maybe some perfume. I don't know. Anyway, so there is something about that when you're dressing up, like to go out or whatever, always take the last thing that you put on. As in, it's extra. You don't need that. Like if you're just going out and you just put a hat on, for example, last thing you do, or a tie, you just take that one off. So this is kind of like applying the same principle for this guy. All right, so we have, yeah, a pretty decent resolution for the sketch anyway. Dynamesh, sorry, not Dynamesh. Well, it's Dynamesh. The polyframe is on, so I'm gonna remove the lines, turn off perspective so that we can do some lines in perspective mode. And let's go ahead and design a little bit of the panels, or how we're gonna shape that sort of helmet. And let's get out of solo mode as well before I do any of that. Yeah, I just want to check that it's a little bit over the actual head. So I'm gonna inflate everything a bit. Cool. We can even push things in a bit more. Kind of liking the idea of just showing kind of like a Daredevil type of thing, but in, you know, hard surface robot. It's just a mix of everything this. But I kind of like that idea. Anyway, we'll come back and polish this in just a second. But I think this one is enough to get started. So the idea here would be to identify the main lines that would create kind of like the effect of the paneling or the panel cuts, and split it using panel loops, and then we can just, you know, inflate and overlap some of those and that sort of thing. Let me just see the chat. So in the future we'll have big colors on the jackets. Yeah, apparently that's the statement, the fashion statement for the future. Is this for animation, concepting, or games? It could be for anything. At this point, it's just an idea. So Grillarv. So today we're going to continue with the character we started last week. Kind of like what's the name? Cyberpunk style type of character. So we're gonna focus on some polishing techniques and panel loops and other things to polish easily the hard surface things. All right, so where were we? I'm gonna grab I'm gonna hold Control and Shift. I'm gonna grab the slice curve. Yeah, I think this one is gonna be the easiest one. And using this, I'm gonna go ahead and rotate my character. There we go. And I'm gonna do a couple of lines just to define roughly this shape here. So I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, go like that, and depending on how straight the lines that you want are, you can just go across like this, or you can press the Alt key once to create a point, and that generates that sort of Bezier curve. So I'm gonna do that, maybe another one here, another Alt, right? So we have that line going across there. Don't worry about what I'm sort of overriding, not overriding, but don't worry about the, even if there's not going to be a line in this area, it doesn't matter. What we need to do is focus on the primary line. This is going to be, let me just bring in my Epic pen. I mean, if you're familiar with this technique, you know what I mean, but just want to make sure that it's clear. So let's say that the first line that we want to create, that panel, would be maybe something like this. I don't know, something like that, right? Because the way that curves work in ZBrush, you cannot necessarily do this with points, right? You can do 1 point, for example, but you cannot do multiple points in one go. So what we end up doing, just to simplify the process, is, let's say we're going to start with this line here. So we just go ahead and do this, and we cut one there, but we're only going to use this segment of the line. So you can ignore this part. Then the next step would be another one. So we're going to do this area here, so we can chop this like that, and then we're going to only use this segment, and we can just forget about the rest, and so on and so forth. So the next one with this segment, we're going to cut like that, ignore the rest, and so on and so forth. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift, make sure perspective is off, sorry. Control and Shift, press Alt. There we go. So we now have this line and this angle here. Let's do the same thing in this area. And you can press the spacebar as well to reposition that line. Something there. And that could be the first one. Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe something here at the back as well, but we can do that with another curve. So let's use the slide circle, right? So I'm gonna press, let's see, this one here. Okay, so I'm gonna press Control and Shift here and do this. Okay, so now we have a bunch of polygroups, which is great, but we're not going to use all of them. Like I said, we want to have 2 different polygroups, really, one to create the top part and another one for the bottom that we might get rid of. So one thing that I like to do at this point, and when I'm playing with panel loops and this technique, I end up with a bunch of extra subtools that sometimes I don't use, but it's good to have them just in case. So what I'll do is, let's create a new folder. Let's duplicate first and then create a folder with the top one. And let's call this one OR panel loops. Okay, and now we can hide it. So if we want, we can come back to this and keep slicing things like that. All right, so now I'm going to select the select rectangular, and I'm going to select the pieces that I want to keep. So I want this, hold Control and Shift, invert that selection. I'm basically going to hide what I want to keep. And then I'm going to hold Control and W to assign a polygroup to this entire thing, invert, Control W to assign another polygroup. So now we have this piece that kind of works, and this other one maybe different color just so that you can see the difference. So that's the whole idea and the purpose the reason why we did the slices the way that we did, so that we end up with like clean topology like that. You can also do masking and the same process, and then you can just polish them. So what I want to do now is, if you look at it closely, maybe around here, you see a little bit of the, I don't know, some of the polygons might not be so clean, and then just because of the DynaMesh. So I mean, it's pretty clean, but if you want to have this cleaner, in fact, I just realized that we should have done another one here. So let's hide this, and I'm going to bring in the slice curve again. And I'm going to do a slice here. And maybe another one just there. Yeah. And one thing you notice is that the slice curves, they don't work with symmetry, even though symmetry is enabled. So that's the reason I did everything from the side view, so that it goes through the entire model, but it doesn't work with symmetry. So in this instance, because I did everything on the right hand side, I want to mirror things first, then mirror and weld. Oops, let's bring back hang on. Sorry, I have to bring back everything, mirror, and then mirror and weld. So now we have the same sort of cut. And now we can do what we did before. So we're gonna keep all of that, polygroup, invert, polygroup. All right, so I just wanted to add that sort of area here for the nose. All right. Now let's go to panel loops. So geometry, edge loops, and we can just go ahead and click panel loops, and that's it. That's gonna give us what we need, the panel loops. And they're gonna be separate pieces, but obviously we can play around with the settings a little bit more and get something that works a bit better. Now before I do that, I'm gonna embed that. I don't know if you noticed, but let's do it again. It's kind of hard to see, but hopefully you see these lines that are like a little bit bumpy. Those are the lines from the previous slices. See, those are the slices. Even though it's a single polygroup, when we sliced, we basically cut through the model, so we have some triangle areas. And the process of the panel loops in this, without changing anything, what it's doing is inflating at the same time that it cuts and produces the panels, right? So the issue here is that we're going to end up with this slightly not as polished piece. So if we want, before we do the panel loops, we can just polish this again, or redynamesh, keeping polygroups, and then do it again. So there's a few things to do. In this case, I'm going to play around with the settings a little bit and probably do a ZRemesher, so I'm not too worried, but just want to mention that that's one thing to keep in mind. I'm going to turn off the line. Here we go. Hey Steven, good to have you here. Happy New Year, man. We have to do the C friends again. That was pretty fun. Okay, so the main idea with this part, at least, would be the main one that supports the rest. So I want to make it relatively thick, and that's determined by the thickness. So I can just go ahead and do these very subtle numbers. This works kind of like the extract thickness. So that was, pretty big, but again, that's kind of like what I need. And this shape that you see here, and the distance between the panels, again, we might need to remove the panels, so I can hold Control and Shift and get rid of that. Let's just do double. Right? So it's clean, nice and clean. Although we can also click on double. Oh, sorry, let's undo all of that. Click on double panel loops, and it's going to be the same thing, but it's a single piece, so there's not going to be any empty area. Oops, did I do it? Oh, sorry, double again, panel loops. So no empty area. So when I smooth out, it's just basically ZBrush just panel looped everything, as in created those nice loops and inflated the area that I needed, which is great. But because I want to remove some of these parts, what I do is, or what I want to do is maybe just remove that inner section. Okay, so we can do it that way. So panel loops is great for that. But because this is going to be the main area, I just wanted to show you what we're going to be doing, hopefully in afterwards. But this is going to be the main area, and I don't need any of this. So before continuing, because we still have, we're kind of like at the design stage anyway. I want to do a couple more maybe panels here. So I'm going to hide that one. Bring in the slice curve again. And maybe something for kind of like the jaw area here. Some curvature. And I know this technique might look a little bit weird, but it's great if you want to do certain things like, let's say, a tiny indentation there. Go like this, and it looks like a lot of lines, but I'm only using them to create this sort of gap in here, for example. So at the end of the day, let's bring back everything, mirror and weld, so we have them on both sides. In this one, I just want to keep these pieces. Maybe even that one. In fact, there we go. So a lot of lines in here, so you can get a little bit lost in what you're doing, but that's all I wanted to do. Control W. So now I can hide the two pieces that I need, these two, and hide the rest. Okay, so you see how this has started to, become the basis of what we're going to be doing next. And again, this could be all done with panel loops. I prefer to work with different subtools. So I'm going to show you another technique before we get into panel loops. So panel loops is something that I would, after I have the base, because again, remember that we still in the process of designing and like coming up with, how this is going to look. This is not based on the concept that I already have. So things can change. So I prefer to just split everything into pieces, and then the panel loops will help me create some details. Yeah, awesome, man. Definitely will be good to go back and do some of the collaboration here in ZBrush Live. That'd be awesome. What character are we creating? We're just sketching some ideas for a cyberpunk type of thing. Hey Berkey, how you doing? Long time no see. I know. Happy New Year. I didn't see you in the extra mile lesson last week, but hopefully I'll see you in the next one. All right, I think we're good. I'm just, again, as I explain things, I'm keep thinking about what would be the best way, because sometimes I just do things that are not necessarily the easiest way. So I just duplicated the head because I want to have maybe another one here. It goes like this basically. You'll see what I mean in just a second. Okay. So let's do it again. I just want to keep this back area. So something like that. Okay. And the reason I separate this into a different subtool, another head, is because if I do this, basically this area at the top is going to sort of overlap with this one that I already have. So just want to have two different ones. And now what I can do is I'm going to duplicate that one, just put it into the originals just in case. Like I said, I end up with heaps of those because I like to come back and change things. But let's say that we are happy with this. We're going to bring in back the line and the polyframe. So we have a bunch of lines in here, but we only want to keep this and this one. So the easiest way for generating the base before we get into panel loops is to delete what you don't want. So I'm going to delete this piece, delete hidden. Same thing with this one. delete hidden. So now we have two pieces. Well, two separate subtools with pieces. This one actually we need to split that one as well. We don't need to, but like I said, for me it's just easier. Split hidden. So now we have three pieces, right? And these ones are super simple to do a quick topology using ZRemesher. So I'm gonna keep the symmetry on. I'm gonna click on half. I'm gonna keep adaptive on, and that's it. I'm gonna click on ZRemesher. I have the default ZRemesher 3.0 set. So there are a few things that we can improve. In fact, let's just go to the geometry, ZRemesher. I'm gonna change this half, and I'm gonna set a target poly count of let's go for 1,000. Yep, so that's a lot better. This number is in the thousands, so 1 is 1,000 roughly. So I have 2,000. We can do half and then remesh again, and that's a little bit better. And to help the ZRemesher, I mean, I kind of like this curve, but we have a triangle there. But if you want to help or give some guidance to the ZRemesher, you can use the move brush with the AccuCurve, and then you can sort of exaggerate, say, some pointy areas like this before you do another ZRemesher. But one thing that I think it's important to highlight is that the process of ZRemeshing is not a final thing. So I use ZRemesher almost as I use Dynamesh, because I can keep doing it, right? I'm gonna do same and ZRemesher, or have ZRemesher. There's a tiny little polygon here. That's weird. Delete hidden. Yeah, that's not too bad. There's a triangle here, but doesn't bother me. Yeah, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and repeat the same thing with the other pieces. Again, set it to 1,000. ZRemesh that. Let's do it again, half. And sometimes you start seeing all these polygons being placed. Let me just undo that. I'm gonna go ahead and keep detect edges and do the same thing. So you sort of keep those edges sharp if you need to, but you don't have to. And I'm getting a weird distribution here. It should be a pretty simple mesh. So there are a couple of things we can do. So one is I'm gonna enable legacy, and this is gonna be more of it's better for organic shapes. But yeah, it gives you a better distribution sometimes, so you can do that. Alternatively, you can hold the Alt key and press the ZRemesher. That gives you the another algorithm that you can use. But I think this one is fair enough. And finally, this one is do the same thing. A target of 1,000 polygons. Sorry, not half. 1,000 polygons. So one here. Detect edges and ZRemesh. A couple more times. That's it. And obviously polishing this one, it's a lot easier and a lot faster. All right, so now we have those pieces. Let's go ahead and sort of place them properly. Like I said, this one I want it to be the main one, and I'm gonna go ahead and inflate this to determine the thickness of that. And of course, this is just a single-sided mesh. This one as well. Like that, like so. All right. So that's pretty much it, all I wanted to do in terms of setting this up as a base. Now, once we have these, of course, what we can do is go to the dynamic palette or dynamic subdiv, and that's how we have currently the color of the jacket. So I'm going to click on dynamic. So now we have dynamic going on, and that sort of solves that sort of sharp corner. I kind of like this one, but you know, feel free to you know, if you want, you can crease those edges and keep those really sharp corners. But I like the softness that this gives me, as well as adding some thickness. This feature is, I absolutely love it. So I'm gonna determine the thickness here, but I'm gonna change the offset, so -100. Okay, so the offset, what it does is based on the center. It's pretty straightforward. So you have, this is your surface, essentially this purple polygroup, and the offset is just sitting here. So at 0, at 0 it sits right here. -100 it just goes inside. That's what I did there, and positive just goes forward. That's it. That's it. So we can do that. We can also smooth the border a little bit. Maybe add a couple of segments. Maybe sharpen that a little bit more. So all I'm doing here is just smooth that border that is generated. And again, this is dynamic. So I'm dynamically generating all of those polygroups and all of those meshes, but it's just a preview. But what's great is that you can control the segments, and these segments is how many polygroups you're adding in that thickness area, and the level of polish or the smoothness is controlled here on the thickness. So very quickly you have something that is really clean, you know, that, let's say, without polygroups, it looks really smooth, and you can, you know, smooth it even further, just like that. But it allows you to control all of these with a single-sided mesh. So if I do something like this, let's say for whatever reason you do something like that, you're not affecting the one, like the piece that is inside, because it's not a real volume, it's just a single-sided mesh. So you could do that if you need to. Not that you wanted to, but you know. So let's go ahead and repeat the same process just so that it's clear for the rest of the pieces. So let's take this guy. And by the way, you can do the same thing with ZRemesher, right? So you can just use the ZRemesher to select every polygroup, extrude, and generate the thickness. Exactly the same thing. But this one allows you to manipulate things a lot easier, especially, like I said, we're continuing the refinement process of the actual sketch, of the actual concept. So for me, it's just a lot faster to work like this. All right, so dynamic, thickness, offset to -100, so it goes in. Maybe not that much. I want this one to be a bit thinner. There we go. Just smoothing some of those areas. And let's do the same thing, about 5 thick segments, and let's smooth that out. There we go. So we get that nice area. Okay, we will tweak this after. And let's do the same thing here. So dynamic, thickness, minus for the offset. Let's control the thickness there. I think that'll work. Alrighty, maybe another one here. Cool. So relatively quickly, we have some pieces that we can start using to refine the mesh, right? And we can sharpen things. We can start using panel loops and all of that. But the great thing about all of these is that everything that we have right now is essentially a single-sided mesh. And because we have relatively the same settings, so let me just confirm that. Show you something cool as well that we can do. So we have, we actually don't have the same one. So I was just gonna say that we can merge everything together and just control every single panel from the same settings, but they're not exactly the same. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm gonna go into solo mode, and I'm just going to refine my plane by doing this. That's really all I'm going to do. Just pulling and pushing polygons or points, especially this area right here. Right, and then just enable it to see how it really looks. Because remember, this is, even if it's a preview, at the end of the day, what we can do is just apply, and then all of this geometry will be real geometry, so something that we can actually use. It's just that at this point, it's just a lot easier to work with a plane, right? All right, let's do this one as well. I'm gonna turn on transparency to see where we need to place this. And I'm gonna refine kind of like the jawline so that it fits a bit better with the head, although the head's still not great, but it'll help to have everything a bit better. All right. Oops. Now, the other thing that you can do with this is, let's say if you want to add additional geometry, I'm going to try to follow this line, just to sharpen that a little bit. You can do that, and again, you're doing that into the low res mesh. So that's something you can do. Another thing you can actually do with this is combine the C modeler with those dynamic features. So let's say tag all of that. Right, and maybe let's polygroup that. And then we can use the Q mesh to either extrude or just hold shift to push that forward. You know, if I just put it, if I just do that with the shift key, right, I'm just pulling this one up like that. But if I extrude it like so, we're actually generating some more geometry here, and now the thickness is going to be, yeah, so there's not gonna be this thickness. It won't work basically, because now we have a little bit of thickness in there. So let's undo that. But we can, I just wanted to show you can do that. You can leave that polygroup there for later, doing some panel looping, if anything. Yeah, so let's continue. So hopefully you can see the reason why I like to keep all of those things in there. I'm gonna do a quick pass to just polish this head again. This is bothering me. So I'm gonna increase the resolution, redynamesh. Let me see the chat because I've been neglecting it. How to get proper hard surface mesh instead of blobby surfaces, which are desperately smoothed. With just the technique that I just showed you, you can use that. But you can also use Dynamesh and then use the polish tools, the trim dynamic, that sort of thing. What's the problem with the triangle? There's no problems. I mean, sometimes you have to have triangles. If you're doing it for animation and deformation and all of that, and the texture is not a big deal, but for animation and deforming the mesh, yeah, you try to avoid that, but sometimes it's impossible to avoid them, and you just need to figure out what's the best place to put them, as in how to hide them. How can you mask a sharp corner without affecting the other sides? For example, masking only the front side of a cube with mask pen without the sides being masked. So if I get this correctly, you mean if I do this here, and where am I? If I do this here, you don't want to mask the other sides. Not sure if I get that one right. But you could hold sorry, you go to the brush palette, go to the auto masking, and then you hold the control key, which acts as the masking tool, and then enable backface masking for that. So that prevents any brush to affect the thing that's behind. Don't know if that makes sense or if that answers the question. Am I using polygroups? Yes, I'm using polygroups. Sorry, I think I'm just behind on the questions. Alt move to push geometry outwards. Yes, that's another tool that I use often. I don't necessarily say that all the time, as in what I'm using, because that is kind of like almost, for me, like almost navigation wise, is it's kind of like a given. Can this replace Maya polymodeling now? It does for me. It's just about how you use the software and what you feel comfortable with. So I don't use Maya unless I absolutely have to, because it's a requirement for the job that I'm doing. But I do everything that I can in the tools that I feel comfortable with. In this case, ZBrush. All right. Similar for when you use the mask pen over a flat surface, it masks some of the geometry from the sides as well. Oh, well, it depends. I think I know what you mean, but it depends on the amount of polygons that you have. If you have like very little polygons, of course, the mask is just masking those points. So if you have a low resolution cube, when you mask the corner, for example, the angle, you will mask the ones that are, or the points that are attached to that side. So the easiest way, yeah, would be to hide it or to polygroup it. All right, so let me just fix this up a little bit. I just wanna make sure I get a nicer looking face, because again, this is bothering me how this is looking. sometimes I was just thinking about that question about the cube. Sometimes if you come from a different software, for example, and then you expect ZBrush to behave in the same way, that's gonna be frustrating because it doesn't necessarily do the same. Like you can do the same things, but sometimes they don't do. ZBrush doesn't do things that other software do in the same way, or like at least in the same way that you expected. So I don't know if that's exactly what's happening to you with the masking. So I guess my question would be: is the same process, the same issue as if you were poly painting a cube? That if you paint, let's say a border or a flat area, it will also paint the the other side or the sides. And if the answer is yes, then that's kind of what I explained before. Like masking is ultimately a poly paint option in a way. So you're poly painting with a specific color the areas that you want to protect, but it's based on the points. Don't know if that makes sense, but I think what I'm saying is if you having issues defining a really clean mask, what you need to do is increase your resolution of the mesh. And if you have a very low resolution mesh, then probably you shouldn't be doing masking anyway, or at least that's what I think. You could instead use polygroups and take advantage of that to hide or to remove or to paint or to do whatever you want. All right, and we're getting closer here. All right. I mean, it's not, probably should spend a bit more time on this one, but this is just purely sculpting and refining volume. So this is the type of things that I would do kind of like if I'm showing something as part of a tutorial or something, I would put this in a time lapse just because it is more of the same. It's just holding the Alt key to push things in, look at it from different angles, refine the volumes, and that's it. So I'm not going to spend too much time in here. Probably just going to do a ZRemesher on this thing so that we can maybe add some details. And I'm focusing on this part only just because that's what you're going to be seeing. The rest is hitting anyway. All right. That just a little bit weird. All right, like I said, Not perfect, but that'll do for now. All of these things that I'm sort of leaving for later are kind of like things that I can easily fix afterwards or spend time doing it, but it's not going to. I mean, I prefer to concentrate on the techniques that I want to show you guys and the design itself. So for that, I'm not going to spend too much time refining these type of things. But something like, you know, these areas and maybe the lips, just a little bit of markings, I guess, markings in there, so that we can do the ZRemesher a little bit faster. All right. So let me just clean some of these blowy areas. We can do a ZRemesher and focus on these parts. So let's duplicate that. I want to hide everything but these two guys, or well, the first one and the second one. I'm gonna enable ZRemesher, have symmetry on, and see what this gives us. All right. Exactly, yes, that's the problem. No angle threshold for masking. Ah, yeah, that's right. It's based on the topology. So think about masking as poly painting. So if you need a sharper mask, a well-defined mask, then use more resolution. And if you cannot use resolution, use polygroups as the easiest way. I have an FBX related question. That's okay. If I import an object, I retopologize elsewhere into ZBrush, and it has holes in it. What's typically okay? So if it has holes and you're not expecting to have holes, what's the issue there? When you save an FBX, it could be a number of things. I think that the safest thing, or the easiest way to try before anything else, would be to export it as different FBXs. So I would go with 2009, 2013, or 2019 in terms of the FBX. So if you go zip plugin or importing, when you're exporting it from whatever software, here you can select the type of FBX. So yeah, just do that. Make sure that you change this. You can change it in most software. So I personally use, I don't know why, but it gives me the best results. Either 2009, 2019, or 2013 are the ones that work best for me. So that's the first thing that I would try. All right, so I'm gonna set a, let's see, 10,000 polygons roughly. So remesh that, and I'm gonna leave the adapt on. Most of the time, I leave the adaptive option on when I'm doing a ZRemesher for organic stuff. It depends on the process, or it depends on what you want to achieve. But you know, the adaptive, what it does is going to essentially adapt, like the name says, to the areas that need more polygons. So here is pretty flat, pretty polished, so it doesn't really matter the size of the polygons here. Whereas in here, in these areas that I'm trying to define kind of like a sharp corner, the polygons are going to be smaller. That's what the adaptive is doing. If you don't want any of that, then you can just remove the adapt. Maybe I'm a little bit too. We don't really need this line. I mean, we could have done just polygroups, and that's gonna be easier. Yeah, that should have been a lot easier. Let's just do a couple of control polygroups. So let's just fill these areas quickly. Because this is a thin line anyway, so we can easily do that just with the with the sculpting brushes later on. And again, this looks super blobby. It's not very polished, but again, it's not my focus at this point. Once I do the ZRemesher, we can, we have a cleaner topology, and we can spend more time refining this a bit more. Okay, so what we can do here is use the masking brushes, like the mask lasso, and define that line just with a mask. So something like that. Oops. All right, I think that's good. Control W. Just need to refine this bit. All right. Something else we can do is, let's hide this bit, and we can hide this area here. Have to be careful with the position of the camera. So let's do it again. And polygroup that. So basically just a polygroup for the top lip, and that's just gonna give us a sharp line in there. Before it wasn't that clear. And we can do the same thing, oops, for the bottom one. And this is a very quick and handy way to do to define some poly loops, just using the polygroups like that. And we can use the polish by groups, and that will define these lines a lot better. And again, it's super sketchy, but it would work just fine. So now what we can do is skip groups, make sure smooth groups is off, and set it to 10,000, maybe less than that this time. And I'm gonna go ahead and click on ZRemesher. Let's do that. Hang on. Thanks for the skin alphas. No worries. Thank you. Glad that you like them. Tool masking for additional masking features. Yep. You're a station. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Glad you like them. What do you use for my final renders? I use anything that I can get my hands on. Lately, I've been using Maverick. Also, the latest version of Marmoset Toolbag 4 with the ray tracing is fantastic. I've been using that a lot as well. I use ZBrush as well. I didn't get the best topology here, so I'm gonna undo that. Set it to 10,000 and use the legacy. What else? So Maverick Render, Keyshot, Marmoset. Every now and again I use Arnold, but again it's not my preferred method. Depending on what I'm doing. So it's mostly depending on what I'm doing. Most of the things that I like that I enjoy doing. So if I have the time to do like a portfolio piece or something, I like to focus on stylization and making things, look more like an illustration type of thing or a concept art. I'm getting some weird artifacts here. I'm gonna go ahead and smooth the groups as well. But yeah, ZBrush BPR. Sometimes I use iRay for substance. So anything that you know, depending on the nature of the job, that's ultimately what I use. Hey Joe, what type of Cintiq that I use? 24-inch Pro Touch Cintiq, I think. Again, I always forget about what the actual thing is called. Yeah, no, I need to keep those. That's the problem with doing something too sketchy. At this point, I could just simply use, oh, I see what's going on. There's a weird thing, a weird polygroup here. I could just bring in a, you know, a base mesh that I already have, but just wanted to show you the process anyway. Yeah, so if I get rid of the polygroups, we lose that sort of loop that we wanted to keep. So what I'll do is I'm gonna go back quite a bit to that point, and I'm gonna do just half of what I have to make sure that we have like a gradual progression of what we want to achieve. And again, I'm not worried about the, you know, having a perfect topology, or not perfect, but at least something that is very well distributed, because yeah, this is still the sketch. So if I wanted to really do this properly, I would manually do the retopology. And again, we're not keeping 80% of this piece. You only see kind of like this area. You know what I mean? So this is more than enough for me. I'm gonna do a polygroup now. And we can just polish that. I mean, we have plenty of polygons. But we can do this very quickly. And the only reason I did the ZRemesher really is because when you add details, or when you're trying to refine, let's say that line in here, that's what we needed to have, that sort of nice loop in here. It's much better to have a cleaner set of loops. So these areas would be problematic if I were to do something else. But you know, if I do, let's just do divide and start refining some of this again. So it's kind of like sketching over a sketch, really. The difference is that the base of this new sketch is slightly better. But like I said, there's gonna be some issues in certain parts, and that's kind of like a good thing that this happens, so that I can show you that this is the reason I use ZRemesher almost like another sketching tool. I don't expect it to give me the perfect topology that I need all the time, and I can just do this, keep sketching on top of that, and then if I wanted to do another ZRemesher, so I can delete hidden, delete lower, do another ZRemesher. We'll wait for this one to finish. What did you keep the smooth groups off? That is an option that is super handy, depending on what process you're coming from. So if you're using Dynamesh, it's most likely more likely you're gonna have a bunch of, you know, squares and jagged edges. So keeping the polygroups on when you run the process is gonna smooth that out. But if you manually smooth them using the smooth polygroups, or if you create a very clean shape with the slice curves, having the groups on is gonna do more harm than good. I'll show you an example of that. See, so even though this one is still not great, it's just a lot better than what we had. So we can potentially just turn on the other one and do Let's do project all. So now we have exactly the same mesh that we had before. Obviously not as clean, but we have some of those details in a mesh that has much better distribution of polygons. So we can clean things up a lot faster, easier, define some lines a lot better. That is really just the purpose of all of this. But remember, more than half of this mesh is going to be hidden anyway. So we only need to focus our efforts in an area, or the area that's going to be visible. So I'm going to do this with the damp standard brush. And these panels you could use, there's a cool technique that I shared today actually in my newsletter, in my email, for my email subscribers, that I covered like how to do this with booleans and ZSpheres, which is super cool. So you can use ZSpheres to, like the live booleans and ZSpheres, to have a live feedback of what the ZSpheres would do. So you can place a chain of ZSpheres around here and have a lot of control over where those things are placed, and use live booleans to get the gap going, which is pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna use the pinch to polish this, maybe subdivide this one more time. And this polish tool, or this pinch tool, is gonna really help me refine these edges at the same time that obviously pinches them. And just give me a very thin line. Cool. So that's looking good. Let's bring in these pieces. Let's get out of solo mode. All right, so we're starting to get somewhere. What else do we need? Let's bring back everything else just to see where we're at. I think we're dropping the glasses. I think so. Although, it could be good to just keep them as well. Maybe I can show you a way to polish them as well. Yeah, I'm gonna show you another polishing technique with this. So I'm just gonna place it a bit better. And we do, I'll show you some simple manual retopology. Yeah, I think I think we need to keep the glasses because it gives it that sort of cyberpunky feel to it. So we just have with the glasses. So I'm gonna polish them here. So all I'm doing at the moment is just polish the surface a bit before I get into the manual retopology, making sure that, because once I start let's say, if you were to do something similar, once you start with the manual retopology, the idea is, because it's a time-consuming process and it's, for me, it's a little bit boring. When you get to that process, you want to make sure that the design is right? So you're not designing anything at that point. You're happy with what you have, and you can just move on with the polishing. So let's do that with this piece. there's gonna be a gap here. And I think one of the issues sometimes that I see, at least with, with some of the questions that I sometimes get regarding hard surface and that sort of thing, is that, sometimes people try to separate the process of designing or the sketch part way too much from the I mean, you should separate them from the polishing. Like, you should separate polishing from sketching, obviously, but in terms of hard surface or organic surface, I treat it almost in the same way. At the end is the level of polish. So this part that I'm doing, I know that it doesn't look great. I know that this is not polished or anything, but I'm only worrying or focusing on, how things look. Look at this piece here at the back. It's horrible, right? I'm not worrying about that. So I know some people like focus on having those things perfect before they move on. But because, like I said, I do a lot of the designing and figuring things out as I sketch, I think it's a little bit hard to get to that point. So if I'm following a sketch, for example, definitely that would be something that I could do that might make things a lot easier. But because I don't have that, part of the process is to design the concept, to design the idea. Then I treat the hard surface almost in the same way. So for example, there, what I did, I'm gonna sharpen. Oops. I'm gonna sharpen that mask. And I'm gonna use the gizmo to say that maybe we can just inflate it actually, or deflate it. Nah, just scale it. Push it down. Yeah, I don't want to see that part. Okay. So anyway, going back to what I was saying. So I have the glasses there. Super sketchy. We can focus on how they integrate with the rest of the design. So for instance, that line that might be part of these glasses, I wanted to follow the design of the helmet, of that line of the helmet. So this is the type of things that is a lot more, like, it's just easier to do it at this stage before you commit to do anything else. Just defining some markings with a damp standard brush or something similar. And then you do the rest. So once you're happy, let's say that we are happy with this. I mean, it's not too bad, right? We can go ahead and define this, like create the base mesh of this and then just polish it from there. But I would only do it at this point that I'm kind of like happy with the design. One thing, maybe another thing we can do, we can clip sort of an area here for the ear. So let's see what we can do. Slice. Maybe something like that. And then we can hide that. Invert that. Delete hidden. And we can just redynamesh, maybe remove the polish. And we just have a line in there. Now, obviously, this is not perfect, but again, you won't see any of that. We just need to have that sort of hint of a curvature here. We can exaggerate it later on, but I think for now that works just fine. All right, so we're getting there. I think we need to do something about. I feel it's getting a little bit too rounded. So before we have time. So before we do the topology for this guy and show you something else, the glasses I mean, I'm just going to do a quick refinement of everything. Because I have a lot of subtools, I can just use the transpose master. So I'm going to click on T-pose. And it's not to pose the character, it's just a simple way to unify everything into a single subtool. And use symmetry and the move brush to just refine the entire silhouette overall. When I'm doing concepts that have multiple subtools and I just want to refine the silhouette after I've been pushing things, or maybe I've been working too close to the model, and I go like this and I check the entire model, the overall silhouette, I go like, nah, that's not gonna work, and I end up just doing this, what I'm doing. So I put everything into a single subtool so that I can move it around. And yeah, the simplest way is really the transpose, the T-pose, transpose master basically. T-pose to whatever. So I can bring the shoulders maybe closer to him, or to the, yeah, not as broad. Fix the back a bit as well. So some general refinements to the shape, and now I can go ahead and you'll see if I switch between the two, right? And then I can go to T-pose to C-top, C-T, sub-T, and ZBrush we're just gonna go through all the subtools, bring in the pose, but we keep all the subtools. So that's just a quick way to adjust shapes and adjust the pose. All right, and I think we are ready to slowly tweak this a bit and then do the topology. All right, let's do the topology. So there's many ways to approach the same thing. With the new tools of the C modeler, you can essentially do that with it. So I'll show you both the C modeler and manual retopology. But because we have multiple subtools and we're in the process of like starting to polish certain areas, what I want to do is just probably work on a separate tool. Before I get to it, I just saw this and I forgot this is something that I wanted to do last time. I just wanted to do some smoothness as well, because it was too sharp. That's it. All right, so we take the tool that we want and we want to clone it. So when we clone it, it's going to be in the same spot, the same tool, the same subtool, but in a separate subtool. So we only have that one. And the easiest thing, let's go ahead and turn off perspective. I'm going to bring in the C modeler, and I think I haven't updated. So I have updated ZBrush. Last time I was using the beta, but I haven't updated all my custom brushes, so I don't have mine here. And the brush that I'm talking about, yeah, I'm missing a few brushes here. I have my own custom C modeler brush that essentially keeps all the settings the way that I want. So the simplest way to approach this would be to insert a new mesh, for example. So let's go ahead to the IMM primitives, and I think this is the one of these ones. Here we go. This IMM primitives H. I think the H stands for hollow or with a hole. But basically, all of these ones have no backside topology. So if you select this one, the IMM primitive H, in the latest version of ZBrush, you have this single poly. So this single poly allows you to set a single point or a single polygon, and that's just an easy way to start building the topology. So I'm gonna use that one, and I'm gonna start around here. Because I have symmetry enabled, I'm gonna make sure that I snap to the middle, click and drag. Let's do there. And I'm gonna go ahead and split on mask. Cool. So now we have this polygon, right? It's just a single plane that we can use to start creating the topology, right? So I'm gonna show you a couple of techniques other than ZRemesher, so a more control manual way to do it. So one thing I wanna do is mirror and weld. So if I do that, because I put it right in the middle, Zero is gonna obviously create that sort of center line. So now we have this line, and now we can switch to the C modeler. I can right click on a point, and I'm gonna, it's already set to move, so I wanna do that. And when you deal with topology, most of the time you don't wanna touch the faces, so you wanna control the points and ultimately control the edges as well to extrude them and that sort of thing. So I'm gonna right click on the face, and I'm gonna set do nothing. Okay. So now I can only move points. I don't do anything with the faces, and with the edges, I can set it to Q-mesh, right, or to extrude, right. Right now we can extrude, do the same thing. Maybe just set it to extrude and leave it as edge loop. The other thing with points, actually, right click on point, is that I want to click on this snap to surface. Okay, and the snap to surface allows you to, because we have, right now it's not visible, but just pay attention to what's going to happen with these points when I click on it. It's going to snap to the surface straight away. So this is super cool, because you can move the points and snap them to the surface. So that's pretty much it, really. Make sure mirror and weld is on. Oops. Move, I think I change. Yep, here we go. I'm gonna increase the brush size so that we can grab those points a little bit easier. All right. We can also enable transparency, so that is a little bit easier. And now we can use the tool, the C modeler, to click on an edge and extrude it like that, right? That's just gonna be the easiest way. And we're snapping to the surface anyway, so okay, so I set this to do nothing so that we can move those points. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky to move the points in the right place, so you can use the move tool as well if you prefer, but I prefer to try to get used to this method. So once you're happy with how it works, it's a lot easier. And most of the time it's just a matter of figuring out where you're placing those points, because they could be too embedded and it's going to be hard to grab them essentially. But so we have that point in there, which is great. Let's go back to extrude here, and this time I'm going to hold shift. Oops. Sorry, I'm going to start extruding, and then I'm going to hold shift or click shift. Oh no, hang on. Is it Control Alt? Alt. All right. So the shift one will snap to the angle, so perpendicular or perpendicular or parallel basically. If you press the Alt key, you can extrude just the loop, the entire poly loop, or just the face. So this is the one that I did before. Now if I press Alt once, now I have this entire piece. If I press Alt again, and hold it, you'll see I get the entire poly loop. So it might be useful for some kind of like gambit something. But I think this one is fine, and you can just do that. And I'm gonna do the same thing here for the top. And let's just go ahead and go back to do nothing so that we can easily manipulate those points and make sure they're snapping nicely to the surface. And I'm not really thinking about the loops here. I just want to show you the technique and then figure out the rest. I just move to the move tool so that it's easy to adjust this, because the C modeler is too precise for what I'm trying to do now. But yeah, that's essentially what I would do with the C modeler. Some of the flat pieces that are really quick and easy to solve. But then I would move into a more manual placement of the dots, and that's the next technique that I'm going to show you, which is using basically the Z-spheres. So pretty simple once you get the hang of it, and you can do the entire thing just with this, right? And use the C modeler to continue doing this thing. Let's see. Do you know how to remove the keyboard buttons names that show up underneath the cursor every time you press them using Cintiq Pro? Okay, thanks. All right, so now the next thing would be to append a Z-sphere, or the other option will be to append a Z-sphere. So I can go ahead and append a Z-sphere. I'm going to scale this one down so that I don't see it, but it's not in the way. And we can go ahead and in the topology section of the Z-sphere, so you would only see this if you have a Z-sphere selected. You can click on edit topology or select a topology that you want to edit. So right now it allows you to select a different tool, but because we put it in the same tool, we can just clone this again. That's just gonna be the easier one, the easiest way. So essentially I took the piece that we did with the C modeler and I cloned that separately so that we can select it from here. So this one here. And now we basically are in this mode with the Z-sphere, right? Where we have exactly the same points that we created with the C modeler, but we can keep editing those just with the Z-sphere. So now, for example, if I click on edit topology, we have move, scale, and rotate. So I'm going to click on move, and I can move those points pretty much in the same way as we did before. In fact, I prefer this method a lot more. So I like the new tools of the C modeler to set up simple things like this. But when I want to have more control of the loops, I prefer to use this old method of topology, and it's also snapping to the surface as well. So it's going a little bit funny there. All right, and the way that you create more is just you go to draw, and wherever you want to start, you hold Control and click on that point. So I'm going to start from here, and I'm just going to do this. And this is how easy it is to create new points. Hold Control and click on the other one to connect them. right? And if you want to do another loop in here, you can come back with the C modeler, for example, and do that. Of course, it's gonna be easier to refine them. You know, the spacing between those in just a second, but try to do this a little bit faster so that you see it's not that complicated, but it is time consuming if you want to do something that looks nice. And I'm sort of gonna make this topology app as I go. It's probably not gonna be the best, but in terms of the loops. Okay. Right, and then we can go with the move tool and adjust all of these points. And I see this one is going to be a problem, but you know, I'm not too worried about any of these. So I like to just place the loops that I want, and then like I said, this is going to be really easy to refine and to make it look nicer once you have placed the basics. Because then you can go to draw and say, okay, this one is not working. Let's just hold the Alt key and delete points, right? And then you go with this one, and this is your new point. You want to make sure that this one has a nice continuation here. So then you start moving those points. Oops. What's going on? Oh no, ZRemesher is freezing. Oh, my tablet is gone. Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm gonna reset my tablet. Maybe if you guys have questions in the meantime while I reset the Wacom, let me know in the chat. That's a bit of workflow. Yeah, I believe also there's a free macro that sets all up for the ZSphere topology. Maybe, yep. It's probably one. There's probably heaps of macros and scripts. You can build your own as well, but you know, it's just a matter of knowing. I mean, the macros are great if you already know the process, I think, and it's just a matter of optimizing and updating your own workflow. But you know, if for some reason you don't have that macro at some point, or you cannot find it, or it's not working anymore, and you don't know the essentials, it could be again more problematic because you are relying too much on that. But if you know how to do it manually and then do it after, it doesn't, you know. All right, we're back, I think. We're back, but it's not great. Okay, it's not much better in terms of topology. It's not a lot better, but it's better than before. But my problem now is with the mouse. So the tablet's not necessarily working the way that I was hoping. Let's do a couple more. Might not do the entire thing because I know it's boring to watch. It's boring to do, and it's boring to watch. But I think like doing this process like so, it's really easy once you get the hang of it. Okay, we're gonna do this border here. Before I do that, I think we should, let's actually start from here. It's gonna be a lot faster. Every time you start from a different point, make sure that you press the control key. Otherwise, it's not gonna use the last point. But using this in combination with the Simula is probably the best workflow, because there's certain things that is a lot easier to do with the Simula. Like you could extrude that piece on its own, or you can use creasing. Different ways to approach it. All right, I think this would work fine. And then we can do some extrusion here inside, or another loop in there. In fact, let's just do that. And sometimes it can take a while to get used to this workflow. Sometimes it has things that you get frustrated with, like clicking on the wrong thing. But once you overcome those, it's really, really, really quick. How to solve this part? I think I'm gonna leave this for the Simula later on. So I'm gonna do just a polygon like that, and then I do an insertion here, an inset with the Simula. Just wanna keep the nice loop there. So you see, it's starting to shape nicely, even though it's not the perfect topology. And I don't know if you, I mean, I don't have a specific methodology to do this. What I'm doing is kind of like thinking about the flow of the lines, but you see that there's no, I'm not really concerned about the spacing at this stage, or like how they're distributed, because I can switch back, and I do that often. For example, this is an issue. Sometimes you get these points that are not connected, so you need to make sure that with holding the Alt key, you delete them, then hold Control back and connect them all again. So yeah, it's just a matter of thinking about the, the loops, especially if you have an idea of how you're gonna polish this later on. For example, I think I want to keep a crisp line in here, but instead of using creasing, what I can do is move these polygons. So I'm just giving you an insight into what I'm thinking as I do this. If I were to explain everything that I'm doing or why I'm doing it, it will be even more boring, and it will take me a longer time, at least in here. So let's say that I want to keep a crisp line in here. So I can use the C-modeler then later to do a line through here, and that would alleviate some of these points that are like too stretched. But I can do it here as well with this technique. So hold Control, click in there in one of the points, and if you click in the middle, it's just gonna create a line right in the middle, and you can go through all of those points, right? And then just get it closer, get that line closer to the edge, and just by having that edge closer is gonna sharpen that point. And it's not gonna be super sharp, just a little bit, and then the one that I want sharp is this other one right here. All right. Why do you do retopology now? Just to improve the sculpt process, or to show how to do it? Both. Yeah, so I'm showing you guys the technique, as well as having something clean that I can refine later, either with C-modeler or polyloops. Yeah, you can retopple. Yeah, you can retopple with C-modeler, anything you want. Oh, my right click is not working now. All right. Let's see how long we can go before my computer crashes again. But yeah, I'm not gonna do the whole thing. I mean, I keep saying that, but I don't know if I should actually. You know what? It's just not gonna be. It's not gonna take too long. But if you guys have any questions about something else, I'm happy to talk about that instead of. I'll try to answer it as I go with this instead of just doing this in silence. This is a process that, again, I would only get to this point once I'm like 100% happy with the design, for example. So it's a process that it's like adding detail, so like the porosity on a character or that sort of thing. Because again, I don't have to think too much. I just need to. I mean, you can think about the placement of the loops and that sort of thing, but it's not really something that requires a lot of design. You don't have to have your design cap on, basically. So you can just put some nice music on and work on the topology. I'm going to place them and then arrange them after. I think that's just going to be easy. At least already shown you what the process is. but this should give us a good looking base mesh that we can refine for the glasses of this guy. All right, I think we are done. Let's do this part here at the back. Any other parts or any other like topology heavy area can easily be done with C-model later, just as a refinement. Hang on. This is not going to work here. Sometimes I have to add loops because like if I want to refine this area later and maybe extrude it or something, I need to have a loop that follow that line. And if you were to do some sort of baking, you also have to consider the loops, especially for any corner areas. It's really important. So that's what I just did there, so that we can have that line if we need to at the time of polishing. Another thing that I like about this technique, by the way, is that you can adjust things based on the size of your brush. What happened here? Something weird. What? Oh, there we go. And then just a quick pass to sort out some of those vertices here. And we will be pretty much ready to go. I'll show you how to continue the refinement with the C-model in just a second. So all of these lines, you can spend as much time as you need to, making sure that they're straight and that sort of thing. But I think we have a decent piece. All right, now the next thing would be, we have 10 minutes. All right, we'll have to continue the next stream. But the main thing that I wanted to show you was the technique. I'm going to show you how to finish this one up so that you can refine it later. Projection thing. Hi Pablo, do you always retopo hard surface stuff? Yeah, it depends. Always depends. Always depends on the end results. Those are the type of questions that I would say yes, like as a reflex, but sometimes I don't really need to. Like if you check one of the things that we've done in the past, like the robot, I just finished it in Keyshot and put some materials and all of that. There's no need to retopologize that. It's just using high resolution Dynamesh with booleans, and you just send it to Keyshot. It can handle all the topology and do that. So if I'm doing something for a production that it needs to have that, I would probably do that, and that's why I said yes, I will do it. But most of my personal work, most of the things that I do and that you've probably seen online, it's are concepts. That's what I really enjoy doing. So sometimes I don't really need to do any topology. Just Dynamesh would do, and then do paint overs it, if anything. It's only if I need to create UVs and have more control over the, like if I want to send it to Substance Painter and that sort of thing. All right, so I'm going to create an adaptive skin. If I click preview right now, this is going to be a Dynamesh because Dynamesh is set to 256. So I'm going to make sure This is set to 0. I'm going to click on preview, go to solo mode, and you can see a quick preview of your clean mesh. Now, the density is set to 2, so I'm going to set it to 1, so you can see exactly what you've created, right? Which I think is pretty decent. There's some things here that we need to tweak, but we'll do that in just a second. So let's go ahead and make adaptive skin. We can create a new folder. Let's call this one Retopo. And that's where we put the ZSphere. We can put that one as well in there. And we can take the newly created piece. We're going to copy that. I'm going to put it in here as well. And I'm going to copy again and go into our working file, this one, and I'm going to paste it in here. So now we can get rid of the base that we have, and we can go into solo mode and start refining this piece the usual way. Now, my computer is not responding properly, so it's not going to be as easy. I have to change the draw size from here because my right click is not working. Could have spent a little bit more time refining the topology before creating the mesh, but I think it would just work just fine for what we need. But another thing we can do is just with the C modeler, set up some, like I said, it's just the best workflow, at least for me, is to use a combination of both. So you can use the C modeler. It's not letting me tag now. What's going on? Okay. I cannot use the tablet anymore. Oh, hang on. QMesh. That's why. Yeah. So I'm gonna set these polygons to be a polygroup. Maybe this as well. Right click. Oops. Right click. I cannot do the right click. Right click, and I'm gonna go to polygroup, polygroup all, click, and you can press the alt key while clicking to cycle through different ones. So let's do the same thing for maybe this area. This is another one of my new favorite features that you can go back in the tagging. So I'm just going to tag only this line. And click, press Alt just to assign a different polygroup. And the reason I'm doing these polygroups right now is just simply so that we can basically have a set of loops following those polygons that we can use as a, not as a retopology, but as a way to clean up the whole thing, just using the polish by groups, for example. You'll see what I mean in a second. All right, so this is going to be another one. I think, oh, here, we need to add another one here. Yeah, other than that, I think we can sort of avoid doing some of those. All right, so we can try a couple of things in here. Let's go to geometry and just go back to the move brush. All right, so I can use the polish by groups. Might be a little bit too strong. It's all right. Polish by groups again. So you'll see it just takes all of those groups and it polishes them. There are some corners that are lost, and that is just because, yeah, we should have, that's why I brought this one here, the crease. You can go crease polygroups, so crease PG will crease every polygroup, or like the difference between polygroup, and you can also use this C modular, or this crease, you know what, let's just use the C modular. Right click on an edge, go to crease, and I'm just gonna crease these edges here. I have a feeling that there is an extra edge here. Alright, so now let's do the same thing. Polish by groups. Oh, not by groups, by features. That sort of would respect that a little bit more, but yeah, there's something going on in there. And that's kind of what I wanted. If you want to maintain more of these lines, like this sharp here, let's say you want to keep a sharp line here, you can add a couple of, you know, creases here. Polish by features again, and now we maintain that line in here. And I think that's fair enough. Polish by features again. Oh, here, this one. I want to keep these two. There we go. And now we can go to the move brush. Just refine the placement of these points. And oops, here at the top. I kind of like the roundness of this, but all right. So we can keep those polygroups, but just to wrap up today's session, what I'll do is I'm gonna give it a dynamic subdivision. It's not gonna look great with the dynamic though, but oh, we have the creasing, so it looks all right. Let's do thickness, offset minus, not that much. And I'm gonna smooth the resulting thickness again. All right. The only thing to keep in mind though is the thickness is not gonna it's not gonna have that sort of sharp line in here. So that's why it looks a little bit weird. But again, it's just a preview. So once you're happy with it, once you apply it, you can go ahead and add that if you wanted to. I think a level 3 is fine. Or you can just go to crease and uncrease all and just get that smooth thing and do it manually again. I think I prefer that, to be fair, but you know, another thing is actually, before I apply this, let me just show you. This is gonna be the last thing I show you. So I'm gonna turn this off. Cool. So one thing you can do is apply the sort of like subdivide this with the current set of what's the name, the creases, and then remove the creases and subdivide again. And what that will do is maintain a little bit of the creasing, but not as sharp. So right now it's super sharp, and even if I enable dynamic, of course, but what you can do is divide once with the sharpening, with the sharp creases, and then uncrease all, uncrease all, and then divide again, and that's just gonna keep, or just enable dynamic now, and that's gonna keep a nicer look, which is really what I want. And we have the thickness, and you can refine this even further. Go with the smooth, or go back with the C modeler. And just crease edge loop partial. Click on that one, click on that one, and when you enable dynamic, you have that sharp line, which is the one that I want. The other ones could stay the way that they were. Maybe not this one. So edge, the way that you remove a crease is by holding the Alt key. Let's do that one as well. Right, so you can play around with those things, and remember the thickness is dynamic anyway. This is annoying. All right, but that's pretty much it. It looks a lot cleaner. Didn't get to do much today. Just one more thing before we wrap up. It's bothering me that this guy doesn't have any ears, so I'm just gonna put a cylinder as a way to cover that, kind of like some headphones type of thing. It's gonna be around here, although it's not really around the ear area. Doesn't matter. All right, cool. So just to wrap up this thing, if I want to do, this is just one last tip. If you want to click on dynamic to create this thing, like make it a smoother, and you actually see the result, the top and bottom of that cylinder are going to look like this with artifacts because they're triangles. That's one of the reasons you avoid triangles in this case. But you can click on the gear icon and go to polycylinder instead of cylinder 3D. The polycylinder will have quads in the middle. That's a bit tiny, but that's exactly what you get. Scale that. Let's go dynamic, and it will work a little bit better. I'm gonna sharpen this line. Not sharpen, sorry. I'm gonna add a loop here to sharpen. That's probably better. Yep, and I'm gonna mirror and weld. And that's it. I mean, we didn't do much other than start polishing this area, but I guess some of the techniques that I show you, you can utilize them to further tweak these. You can use the polygroups now, for example, in this piece. now that you have everything clean, and extrude some polygons, so use the extract function. That's probably something that I would prefer doing in this case to, you know, create some other pieces on top. Maybe we do that next stream, and, you know, finalize the jacket, because the jacket is at a very sketchy point. There's some cool things that I can show you as well. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to polish this type of hard surface areas with the new tools in ZBrush as well. All right, so I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Hopefully, again, it's been of use. What some people prefer to decimate than retopologize. Again, it depends on the purpose. So if you're going for an animation, for example, decimate is not going to work, because decimation is just going to triangulate everything. If you're going for 3D printing, for example, then you don't need to do retopology. You can just have a very high res mesh and then do the decimation to optimize it, but preserve the volume. So it depends on what you want to achieve, really. It's not a preference of I prefer to do my models decimated than retopologizing them. It's ultimately the purpose of what you're doing. That's what you need to define before deciding what workflow is best. If you have two edges close together to create a sharp edge, crease still necessary? No, it's not. I mean, it's not. It is. It depends on how sharp you want it. You can get it really, really close, but just keep in mind the crease is kind of like an alternative to. So you don't have to add extra loops, because obviously a loop is going to create more polygons. So if you don't want to do that, if you want to just crease that area or a specific area, then yeah, you don't have to do that. But if you don't care about the amount of loops, you're not limited, you can obviously use loops. I personally prefer loops, because it gives me a nice, even if it's a tiny little bit of bevel, always helps. All right, cool. Yep, so I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Just something else that someone else asked me, just if you're interested in the Extra Mile, the course that I have online, I'm hoping to open enrollments pretty soon. So end of the month or next month, early next month. If you're if you've been waiting to join, again, that's gonna be if you follow me on Instagram or anything like that, I will put it in there and send you an email if you're part of the email list, if you're in the waiting list of the Extra Mile. So I'll open that up. I have a couple of really cool things for this new enrollment, so it'll be pretty cool. The Extra Mile is the step after the ZBrush Guide course, the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course. Yes, that's basically the idea. As in, the Extra Mile is a little bit more advanced. I go a lot more in depth on. I mean, ZBrush is only one module, so I go in a lot more depth into the rest of the processes, and more like it's for concepting, but it's I give some tips about production and productivity, that sort of thing. So it's more in-depth course, whereas the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course is 100% ZBrush. So all the modules are dedicated to ZBrush. I cover everything from the ground up. So everything's covered. I specify the different workflows. So again, there's no guesswork. There's no thinking, okay, basically the decimation versus retopology, that's sort of like covered in the process of learning the workflows in ZBrush. So the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course will be opening as well, but not just yet. There's still a few things that I need to sort out with the current students. But you know, just letting you know, if you're in the Extra Mile, if you're in this Ultimate ZBrush Guide course, the Extra Mile would be a good step to move forward into other workflows and more advanced tips. But the Ultimate ZBrush Guide covers pretty much everything that you need to know about ZBrush. Other than that, I have a couple of free workshops that I'm going to be doing soon. Intensive for intermediate and for beginners. So that's going to be hopefully cool for you guys. Yep. And that's it. The other thing is I'm planning to open a Patreon. I have a cool idea. It's just an experiment. We'll see what happens if it actually helps or not. I have it's not necessarily like what you would see in Patreon. It's just slightly different, but I'm going to use Patreon as a platform to test it out. So I'll let you guys know once it's ready, once I have everything in place. But yeah, that's it. All right, guys. So I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your week. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.